You are now entering the spoiler zone. The following podcast contains explicit plot details and pockets of profanity. You have been warned. The Exton Moss Experiment. Adventures in Wine and Space with Simon Exton and Ken Moss. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Exton Moss Experiment. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And this time we are watching the end of 1963 special of That Was the Week That Was. That Was the Week That Was, informally known as TW3, was a satirical TV comedy programme that aired on the BBC between 1962 and 1963. Devised, produced and directed by Ned Sherrin and presented by David Frost, the programme is considered a significant element of the satire boom in the UK in the early 1960s. It broke ground in comedy by lampooning political figures, broadcast from Saturday 24th of November 1962 to the 28th of December 1963. And we have watched the very last episode. Dr. Exton, we have a reason for watching this. Why are we doing it?
It is because, sadly, Tom Lehrer has died.
Now, for the benefit of the boys and girls at home, who is Tom Lehrer, or was he?
He was originally a mathematician who was an enthusiastic piano player on the side, and he started writing topical songs, topical and humorous, some of which are bloody hilarious. The Masochism Tango is one of the funniest songs that's ever been written, and Lily Savage and Bob Down used to do a stage version of it that was just one of the funniest things that I have ever seen. I remember seeing it live way back in the 90s, and I've never seen a video of it. And if anybody out there in podcasting land has access to a video of those two dancing the Masochism Tango, please, please, please send it my way.
Let our love be a flame, not an ember. Say it's me that you want to dismember. Blacken my eye, set fire to my tie as we dance to the Masochism Tango.
Probably the best song that he's known for is the Elements song. So he takes the tune of I'm the very modern of a modern major general, and the lyrics are all the elements of the periodic table.
I'm very familiar with it. It's very clever.
There's antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium, and hydrogen, and oxygen, and nitrogen, and rhenium, and nickel, neodymium, neptunium, germanium, and iron, americium, ruthenium, uranium, europium, zirconium, lutetium, vanadium, and lanthanum, and osmium, and astatine, and radium, and gold, protactinium, and indium, and gallium, and iodine, and thorium, and thulium, and thallium.
That was Tom Lehrer. Lots and lots of his stuff is very clever. Poisoning the Pigeons in the Park is hilarious. He does some very, very dark stuff. I Hold Your Hand in Mine, which includes lyrics, The Night You Died, I Cut It Off. I really don't know why, and now every time I kiss it, I get bloodstains on my tie. You haven't listened to any of his stuff, have you?
I've heard fragments of what you've sent me, but yes.
It is absolutely hilarious. And the reason that Tom Lehrer is such a big deal for me is it was one of a tiny handful of things that my mother actually found funny. She had pretty much no sense of humour about anything. And apart from absolute in-your-face slapstick, so her favourite series of comedy films were the old Mother Riley films and Weekend at Bernie's. So pure slapstick humour. And when I was a kid, she always used to go on about At Last the 1948 Show and some of the slapstick stuff on that.
Why is Tom Lehrer not mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia?
He must be.
Not about this, no.
Yes, he is. He wasn't involved with the British version.
Oh,
there was an American version.
Right.
Regularly contributing writers included Gloria Steinem, William Brown, Calvin Trillin, and Tom Lehrer. Norman Paris was the musical director, and Nancy Ames sang an opening new satire song, which was The Millicent Martin thing, that was the week that was. It's over, let it go. And then reprises of the week's news, really.
So even though we've watched the British version, this is in tribute to Tom Lehrer, who was part of the American version.
Interestingly, all but the pilot of the British version, so 36 out of 37 episodes exist. Only a handful of the American one exists. And there's a really impressive list of scriptwriters. So you've got the people that you would probably expect: John Bird, Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Peter Cook, Dennis Norden, Bill Oddie. But there's also John Betjeman, Roald Dahl, Kenneth Tynan.
I thought that name might leap out to you somehow, yes.
And Dennis Potter.
That's an impressive list of, well, scriptwriters certainly, but you've got an impressive lineup in the cast. At the time, I suspect they were all up and coming. In years to come, some of them certainly went very, very big. So you've got Kenneth Cope, Roy Kinnear, Willie Rushton. And there were other people in it as well that you know, so people like Robert Lang. He was a very familiar face on TV. Millicent Martin is still with us. She's 91 at the time of recording.
And still acting off and on.
She was in Frasier as a recurring role.
Yeah, she was Daphne's mum.
I don't really know Frasier, I've got to be honest.
Really? Because
Yeah.
I would have thought that has you written all over it.
It should do, shouldn't it? Frasier is one of those things I've only ever seen in hotel rooms when it's been on in the background. But more interestingly, she had a few marriages, but one of them was Norman Eshley. He was the neighbour in George and Mildred, and he only died very recently, beginning of August this year.
And TW3 stopped because the British government felt that its irreverence may well
Influenced the election in 1964.
sour the electorate. And so a similar thing came back the next year with David Frost as compere, called Not So Much Programme, More A Way of Life. Only ran for one season this time, but was the first TV appearance of John Bird, John Fortune, Eleanor Bron and Roy Hudd. Michael Crawford had a regular role.
I know where this is going.
And it regularly featured the British singer Cleo Lane.
Why don't you come over for dinner? We'll be so glad to see you. John and Sheila's coming for dinner. There'll be the four of us, only the four of us. Phone rings, door chimes, in comes company. No strings, good times, just chums company. John and Sheila's coming for dinner. There'll be the four of us, only the four of us. We love company.
Skibbity-bop.
So that's presumably was only the six of them.
Only the six of them. Oh, dear me.
Yeah,
dear
neither
me.
of us can do that anywhere near as good as the Peggy Mount Boys. Or as loudly.
That reference will be completely lost on most listeners. Oh, Cleo Lane and her husband Johnny Dankworth, a very, very short-lived series from the mid-70s called In Company.
There is the customers of a rather nice Indian restaurant in Newcastle where that voice will be no stranger at all.
Oh, shout out to the Peggy Mount Calamity Hour. A absolutely wonderful podcast and a great pair of chaps for company.
Yes, we met up with them for what I remember of a weekend. A few weekends ago, we went to a Blake 7 convention in Newcastle, which was fun. The convention was good. You hit on Sally Nivette while she was on stage and got shot down in flames, which was entertaining.
Dragging us back to That Was the Week That Was.
Well, I was going to say that after Not So Much Programme, More A Way of Life, it then went on to, again, a similar thing called BBC Three. David Frost wasn't involved in this. It was, again, produced by Ned Sherrin, but hosted by Robert Robinson. And, oh God, I know how this is going to end. The regular performers were sort of a lot of the ones that we've heard before. So John Bird, Eleanor Bron, Linda Barron, Roy Dotrice, Bill Oddie turns up, as does Leonard Roster. And the guests include Millicent Martin herself and your favourite,
The renowned Yorkshire playwright Alan Bennett. The musical director was Dave Lee. Within its white sets, BBC Three retained the look of its predecessor, not so much a programme. Its name was a reference to BBC's second channel, BBC Two, which had started the previous year. I didn't say anything.
Where do we know Dave Lee from? The Avengers.
What?
Yeah, he was Venus Smith's backing band, wasn't he?
I was more thinking that thing that Heather from RetroTube loves. Dave Clark, I'm thinking of.
That's
now.
Dave Clark.
Edit all that out, forget that.
Oi, how come you leave in my fuck-ups and you edit out your own? He also wrote Kinky Boots, didn't he?
Ah, now, considering that we use it as the theme tunes of Kinky Boots, I should probably know that bit.
Ah, I didn't know this. Kinky Boots was originally written for That Was the Week That Was, and then was subsequently recorded by Patrick Mooney and Honor Blackman. I always thought it was written specifically for them, but apparently not.
God, I love these Wikipedia wormholes. As I've just found out by looking at the BBC Three TV series Wikipedia page, in the edition of the 13th of November 1965, during a discussion on theatre censorship, in which Robert Robinson and Mary McCarthy also participated, Kenneth Tynan supposedly became the first person to say fuck on British television.
Except he wasn't.
Although research indicates that the word was used twice before, once by Bernard Behan. I don't know who you are.
He was an Irish playwright.
He claimed, perhaps disingenuously, that the word no longer shocked anyone. The storm which resulted forced the BBC to make an apology for Tynan's comments. No recording of the incident is known to exist, because I've heard Miriam Margolyes claim that she was the first person to say it.
On University Challenge.
So there's lots of people clamouring to be the first person there.
Yeah, but hers was about 1960 or something like that. It certainly predated the Tynan one. I'm not sure when the Brendan Behan was supposed to be.
Scraping us back to That Was the Week That Was.
Well, that last bit was entirely relevant because Kinky Boots was originally performed by Millicent Martin on That Was the Week That Was.
I really, really should love this. I can see it entirely for what it is. Now, looking at it through 21st century eyes, looking at it through the eyes of somebody who loves political satire, this must have been quite a shock.
Yes.
Because the whole style of it is very, by 2025 standards, very modern. It's loose in terms of how it's filmed, so it's unashamedly on a TV set. And also that the camera boom just breezes in and out of shots with gay abandon. Nobody's bothered with that. There's several wide shots of the audience and the fact that there are several sets. It's all filmed and done in a very 21st century way. It's very slick for 1964. I mean, you've got the musical dexterity by Millicent Martin. She was a really good performer. I'm surprised that she wasn't better known for music, because looking at her credits, they're largely TV.
Yeah. There's one thing that she does, and it's towards the end of the Goodbye to TW3, because the one that we saw is basically a compilation and final hurrah. And she does a duet with herself that is recorded on split screen, and it is absolutely brilliant.
I had to look twice at that to make sure that it was actually split screen, because it's flawless.
Yes.
For 1963, hats off all round for that one.
And, you know, things like the Kennedy tribute, which will have been written within days, because what day did it go out?
Well, wasn't the Kennedy tribute almost immediate?
Yes.
It was only 20 minutes long, the programme that they do, so a much curtailed programme. But yeah, 23rd of November, 63, the day after. TW3 produced a shortened 20-minute programme with no satire for the edition on Saturday, 23rd of November, 1963. BBC presenter Richard Dimbleby broadcast the President's funeral from Washington, and he said that the programme was a good expression of the sorrow felt in Britain.
One day in Texas, death rode out to take America's bright sun. Then Texan death rode out again, which did no good to anyone.
A young man rode with his head held high under the Texas sun, and no one guessed that a man so blessed would perish by the gun. Lord, would perish
her song is superb.
Well, I was going to say this. We've got a very, very good cast list involved in this, a very, very good writers list involved in it. And musically, you've got Lord Grainer in there. However, I think Millicent Martin steals the show. Because without her as the musical links and being as, just everything about her on screen, it wouldn't really hold together quite as well, I don't think. Because she's certainly not the dolly bird to hold things together. She is in there as an actual performer. She just happens to be a really good singer, and they've used her to good effect. But of all the people that are in this, she stands out. She eclipses David Frost even.
I've never thought David Frost was that brilliant a performer, to be perfectly honest. He's good as a compere.
Well, I think that's really it. David Frost really is there as the front man. I don't think he's the strongest performer, particularly when you've got people like Willie Rushton in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, you've got me with Willie Rushton. Loved the man. Roy Kinnear's pretty good. And Kenneth Cope, who I didn't realise was around for this sort of thing. Obviously, I know him best for Coronation Street and Randall and Hopkirk, but no, this was a bit of a surprise because I'm not at all familiar with this. Like I say, even though I love the satire, this has somehow passed me by, particularly considering most of it exists, the vast majority.
Yeah, but it's one of those that, apart from that episode that we saw, is almost impossible to see any of.
Yeah, but even so, it's the sort of thing I really should have at least found fragments of before now. There's not really any excuse. The one thing I will say is it relies heavily on knowing the political figures of the time, and much as I'm interested in political history, and I've read a lot of biographies and diaries, even I was clinging on by my fingertips to a lot of this.
Oh, I had to stop and Google.
Yeah, dating-wise, it's a bit of a difficult watch, if I'm honest. I did struggle through a lot of it. What I will say is that it treats the viewer with a great deal of intelligence in a way that they don't now. So the sketches and the performances, they're rapid fire, and there's a lot of sarcasm in it, clearly referring to events of the day, but they're done in a far more, you know what we're talking about, way than you would get away with now.
Oh, now this is interesting. Just reading down on the Wikipedia, it looks as though the reason that all of them survive is because, although it was broadcast live, it was recorded for legal reasons. So obviously if they got sued, they need to be able to show the episode in court.
I mean, the other thing I've made in my notes is that there's a lot of parallels with issues that are relevant today. And again, this is where my disdain of modern audiences comes to the fore. There was a song about America and specifically sort of apartheid and racism, and it was all in there. And a lot of it's done in blackface, and it's clearly, very, very clearly a piss take, and there are words in there that are not socially acceptable now. It's all done in context. It's all very, very pithy. Behind the scenes, you had Huey Green, who was producing it, saying, yes, the BBC is supposed to be impartial. With something like racism, I'm quite happy to be partial. This is wrong. It's just not right. We can have a dig at this. And they do, and they skewer the bloody thing by taking the absolute piss. If you put that now in front of a modern audience, all they would say is that's racist, they're doing blackface. They've used that word. You've completely missed the point. You couldn't get away with that now, and it's a shame.
On an intellectual level, I absolutely agree with you. You watch it, it is very, very clearly anti-KKK, white nationalism.
Even the use of that word is clearly used ironically.
It is, absolutely. I agree with you completely. It still makes me uncomfortable to hear it.
Yeah, we have different views on words and language, and I get that people are uncomfortable with certain words, but my beef is that it's like the Fawlty Towers sketch with the brigadier, the major, when he's talking about taking a girl to a cricket match. That is used as an example by certain quarters of how TV in the 1970s was racist, and you've completely missed the point. But that subtlety, As you've just said there, the intellectual nuance of that is all splashed to the four winds because you've got the knee-jerk, never mind the context, feel the offence. It's such a shame that we've lost that sharpness and that bite. We're willing to have a good, hard dig at somebody, whereas now you have to have a subtle sideways dig that's not quite as pointed because some people might completely miss the point.
I'm not sure it is missing the point. I can absolutely see the point of this. I can see the intelligence behind it. I can see the intention behind it. That word still makes me uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean that I don't understand why they've used it. And it doesn't mean that I don't understand that the whole point of using it in the first place was to make people uncomfortable. But it makes me sufficiently uncomfortable that I wouldn't want to listen to it again.
Oh, well, it's not really that I was suggesting that we use that word now. We've moved on, so...
I mean, what I don't think there should be is retroactive censorship.
That's more my point, yeah. No, I'm not suggesting that would be appropriate for a sketch now.
I suspect it wasn't appropriate for a sketch then.
Well, again, I picked through the bones of Wikipedia with a little bit of a pinch of salt because somewhere buried in there is that it was viewed at the time as racist for having blackface. Now, this is the early 60s. I'm not entirely convinced that there was a great anti-racism movement at that period in TV history.
There would have been. It would, 3-4 years after Sapphire? There would have been.
Well, certainly by the time you get to the late 70s, there was sufficient sort of weight to justify the fact that, say, Black and White Minstrels was taken off, because by that point, there was a weight of public opinion that says, this isn't very suitable anymore, please. Thank you very much. In the early 60s, 15 years earlier, there's a lot of Wikipedia rewriting of history at times, or maybe over-egging things that were just maybe a spark at the time.
Yeah, and this would only have been a few years after the start of the Black and White Minstrels, and weren't the blackface minstrels something that black people had to do way, way back to be able to appear on stage?
I'm not entirely convinced because black performers have been going back centuries. This is nothing new. I suspect that's a revision.
No, I remember hearing about this years and years and years ago. I think when the Black and White Minstrels were still on the air, Are You Being Served did a Black and White Minstrel themed episode. My dad is hugely into his history, and he was saying it was because sort of 1930s era people like Al Johnson had to do basically comedy blackface to be able to appear on stage in America. Here we go. Minstrel shows, a long-established feature of British music halls and seaside entertainment since the success of such acts as the Virginia Minstrels in Liverpool in the 1840s. Oh God! And I'm not going to read much of this out because no, some of the names that they gave their performers were no.
We'll park that there. In itself, I am not going to begin to question the value of this. It's very clearly, I would say, the start of its thing. There must have been satire before, but I think it was the start of a very new brand of satire because I can't think of any other examples. The name of it has lived on decades after the two brief series that it has, and it's very modern in its feel. The only problem is it's like a lot of political satire. It relied heavily on knowledge of the time, and even for somebody like me who's really interested in this sort of thing, it's a difficult watch. So as an example of archive TV, it's invaluable to show just what a seismic leap it was. As a watch or as a piece of entertainment, in 2025, not so much.
It's a very interesting watch. As I say, I kept having to stop to look up who the people that they were lampooning were. Some of them I knew, Profumo I knew, and Watson and Crick.
I should hope you know Watson and Crick.
Oh, yeah, shall we talk about the Matilda effect?
Let's not. I mean, bottom line, did you enjoy this?
I think enjoy is probably the wrong word. It is very, very interesting. There are some very entertaining bits of it. As a sketch show, no, not really. I had to keep looking up who they were talking about. Oh, I quite like the Dylan Thomas. I thought that was very cleverly done.
Lots of it was cleverly done. And like I say, I'm praising the the very biting satire and the way it was done, the skill of the performers, and the speed and the pace and the level of intelligence that's conveyed upon the audience that it's aiming at.
Oh, This Is Your Life thing. It didn't really mean anything to me when I first watched it, but when I read the biography of the person that he was Home Secretary at the time, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, yeah.
When I read what it was that they were describing, I'm not at all surprised that the government got pissed off.
Well, the Prime Minister of the day, Macmillan, he was broadly supportive of it at the start. I mean, I feel quite sorry for Harold Macmillan because he did really try to not encourage but be more tolerant of satire because he realised that was the way the world was moving. They were quite cruel to him as a result, to the point where he actually went to watch a live show somewhere and somebody spotted him in the audience, and the show just ended up focusing all its ire of this show was focused on him in the audience for the rest of it. And he was there supporting the fact that people should be able to take the piss. But it was the people around him that...
Wasn't there a bit about that in The Crown?
Oh, there was. Oh, I can picture it now. Yes. There was a little artistic license. The spotlights all went on him in the audience. But no, Macmillan was all for free speech and letting people have their say because he thought that it got it out of the system. And rather than trying to curtail it, it was far more healthy to let people have their say.
And the other thing that a lot of this reminded me of was, do you remember The Hour?
I do indeed.
Which we have an upcoming episode on that may see the light of day sometime this century.
Eventually.
I mean, that was setting up a news programme rather than a satire programme. But it was all about accusations of partiality from the government, while at the same time the government was trying to control what they did. The Hour was fantastic. Obviously, a modern take on this kind of thing. And at some point, our episode on that will come out. But in the meantime, it's well worth a watch, particularly the first season. Second one falls off a little bit. Anyway, final notes on TW3. Its historical value is immense. It's very clever. It's of its time. You kind of need to know your history or be prepared to look up the history of what it is that they're talking about. But no, I'm glad I watched this.
From a historical perspective, I'm glad I watched it too. So thank you for the suggestion. The one thing we haven't touched is that the running time is 50 minutes, give or take. Because there is a lovely bit on Wikipedia, and having looked it up, it is actually true. They were a little loose in terms of how long the programme should run for. One person described it as running for as long as it ran for, regardless of the time slot. Because it was broadcast on Saturday night, so it was a very healthy audience. It says here about an audience of around 12 million. It often under or overran as cast and crew worked through material as they saw fit. At the beginning of the second season, in the autumn of 1963, in an attempt to assert control over the programme, the BBC scheduled repeats of The Third Man after the end of TW3. Frost sabotaged this by, at the end of each episode, reading out a brief summary of the plot of the episode that was due to follow, spoiling its twists until the repeats were abandoned. You'd never get away with that now. But you've got to admire the chutzpah and the balls. Bottom line, I am impressed with how slick this was for the time. And it's no surprise to me that it's remembered as fondly, and it set a benchmark that it did. So yeah, as a piece of entertainment, I must admit I was drifting off a little bit because it's no longer relevant to people that I know or anything that I'm really familiar with from the time. As a piece of TV landmark, absolutely superb, and I'm glad that it survives.
And you can see how there's a direct line from this to Spitting Image.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The final thing, just talking about the Third Man TV series, the marvellous people at Film Fabulous have recovered a couple of the missing episodes from it, and that was showcased at their event last October.
Splendid. We're always happy when missing episodes are returned, regardless of what they are.
They didn't show the full episodes, but they did show clips of them, and they looked marvellous. So big shout out and thank you to the Film is Fabulous crew.
We're very lucky at the moment because there's a lot of groups out there, and there's a big push at the minute to recover lost TV and film. a very active push to catalogue what's out there. When people are passing on, the film collections are being catalogued and digitised. We are very lucky to be in this position. It's taken a lot longer than it should have done, but stuff is being found all the time now that's considered lost. And it's all to the good, because all of these, no matter whether you, me, or anybody else thinks that they are an entertaining watch, they are a catalogue of the time and absolutely invaluable. So, 3 cheers to archive TV. It's marvellous.
And only a couple of weeks ago, Film and Fabulous have announced that they've obtained films from the private collection of a former freelance editor who worked for the BBC, ITC and other production companies by the name of Eric Mival, who worked on Doctor Who.
Yeah, I'm not getting my hopes up too far by this, but it's...
But he also did Top of the Pops, Comedy Playhouse, Wednesday Play. Hopefully there will be something.
But on that hopeful note, boys and girls, thank you very much for listening. Raising a glass to Tom Lehrer. Thank you for your musical contribution, sir. We will be back next time. We would urge you all to go out there, watch something from the archives, bask in it, revel in it, enjoy it. That's what TV's there for. We'll be back soon. Thank you for listening.
Bye now.
The Exton Moss Experiment featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was performed by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.